One of the things that we might think about in terms of our values is students putting themselves out there. You know, being willing to fail. If you're going to be an effective learner, you know, really get out there and be willing to fail. Take some learning risks, you know, really get out there. And putting yourself out there can be quite difficult. And I was working a little while ago with the region, and I want to show you this clip from Sally Griffith, who was at Mitcham, talking about students, her learners, and setting them up to fail. Sally's point about, you know, thinking about the curriculum, thinking about the purpose in a different way, really allowing for, you know, that she felt empowered by that mandate now to slow down and teach this stuff, rather than, you know, just go through the content, go through those things one at a time. Oh, that's changed the way that she thinks about it and has made the students more successful. And so I guess the point I want to make is, you know, again, across this continuum that we've got in mathematics, failing in fluency, which is the knowledge and the know-how, failing there is getting it wrong. You know, so I have to ask the students a question and say, what's the answer? And the way of failing is to get the wrong answer. Oh no, that's wrong. That's all you've got. Failing over here is spectacular learning opportunity. You know, have a go. You know, what are the different alternatives? Why is this alternative better than that one? Let's try this one. Oh no, that didn't work. Oh, this one's better because, you know, so we can start to do the reasoning. Because why did that fail? Why didn't it work? You know, so we're explaining, we're adapting, we're saying, well, is that going to work over here? Let's try it. No. Oh, what's going on? The sorts of failure that we can now have are completely different. And what that allows us to do is to change our feedback. Because if we're doing fluency only, if we're doing content only, then our feedback is trapped in right or wrong to some extent. Oh, you should have done this. You know, we're really limited in terms of our feedback. But when we escape from that, it's not either or. When the content is part of building the understanding, building problem solving, building reasoning, the sorts of feedback that can we give are really different. Because now we can actually interact with the students. Why were you thinking that? I'm looking for some reasoning. Go on, prove that, you know, what's your idea? Prove that. You know, how did you connect those together? You know, that sorts of scaffolding we can do, that sort of feedback that we can give to the kids and then get some feedback from the kids is really transformed when we use all four, not fluency or the others, but when we use all four of these strands. When we want our students to be effective learners in maths through all four of them, the ways in which we give feedback, we might change that and think about that in different ways. It's been interesting to talk to people here and in other regions about people in, so in special schools or schools or sites where students are, you know, really disengaged from learning in one way or another, and saying, you know, that the content of the curriculum is just overwhelming, particularly for them, and that actually seeing the essence of the subject, saying, okay, well, we can see what we're looking for now in terms of being an effective learner within these subject areas, you know, can really help us to think about those students as well. Is really starting to get to the heart of, when we think about this, the extent to which students are developing in terms of their fluency, understanding, problem solving and reasoning in maths, these proficiencies, well, when we get to that, we can really start to see the strong opportunities for differentiation, rather than I'm going to teach this and then this and then this and then this. Okay. I just wanted to just move on and talk about you know, the sorts of things that we've kind of been driven to, and I think a lot of the resources that are available to us drive us to. And that is that we often want our students to understand an idea, you know, some empowering idea. There's something out there that we want them to understand. And the temptation is that we kind of rush to it. That there's this thing there, what we do is we get hold of the kids and we rush to it and we tell it to them, and then we might, you know, zoom out a little bit and say, oh look, and there's it's connected to these things. These are some of the ways in which this idea might be used. It's connected to some of these things. And really, by doing that, we're missing the opportunity of a much bigger, you know, kind of conceptual understanding, an interlinked way of thinking about that idea that we want them to develop. You know, this idea that there might be an idea out there, and in the middle of that, in the middle of these interconnected ideas, so each one of these spots, let's say, is another idea, and they're all linked in some way to our core idea. So instead of just rushing to the idea, we might actually have a conversation with the students about where they are and pick up on certain points and use that as a way in, from the outside, from the purple and blue ideas, then we'll move to the green and the yellow, and then finally to the middle idea. And then we can come at it from another way, and then we can come at it from another way. And we can have the conversations that go round and round and round and round, and we never might get to that core idea until at the end it just seems pretty obvious, because we've approached it from so many different ways that the kids themselves will be able to construct that idea, that it's not I'm telling you this and here's some links for you. John Pegg's work, he uses particularly the solo model, and what really that's about is we look at students' responses in terms of unistructural, they've got one thing to tell us, that core idea. Multistructural, that they've got a couple of bits and pieces of ideas to tell us. And then relational. And it's when we get relational thinking that it all kicks off, that we're getting the understanding, that the problem solving really takes flight, that the creativity within the subject can really get going, because we've got all these links. But it turns out from the research, if we tell the kids an idea, and then we tell them another idea, and then we tell them what the link is between those two ideas, they don't see it that way. They see it as three separate ideas. It's still multistructural. They've still not got the relational thinking, because we told them that piece of information. It's just another thing to remember. And so this idea of, now coming at these core ideas, these really important ideas within a subject, but coming at it from different directions, giving multiple points of entry into an idea, the curriculum is really demanding that now. It's a kind of real shift, the why of, we really want the understanding to come out rather than the kids knowing stuff. That's, I think, another challenge for us. When I was thinking about this idea, I went and found this tool online, and again, I'm going to do a bit of a risky thing. It's a wiki mind map. So it uses Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not we know that Wikipedia is not the font of all knowledge, and certainly not the font of reliable knowledge. But it gives us a way of, if our content knowledge isn't as interlinked as we might want it to be if we're teaching a particular idea, this can give us some ways of rethinking the content. So I'm going to think of an idea that I want the kids to explore and to get into, and ultimately to understand to some extent. So what should the idea be? This is my high risk bit. What should the idea be? Anyone? Go on, give me a curly idea. Discrimination. Okay, so I'm going to put in. Yeah, that's right. I did this. Suffering was one I had with one group. Okay, so discrimination. So I've searched, and it's going to generate me a mind map. Can you see that? So what it's done is, at the middle, it's put discrimination. And all it's done is it's gone to the Wikipedia page for discrimination, and it's picked out all of the links within Wikipedia from discrimination. And so now I've got, let me just do the list. I've got prejudice, I've got gender identity, religion, disability, ethnicity. I've got state discrimination versus free market discrimination. What's that? No idea, but look, it's a new thing, it's a new way of thinking. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to click on this little plus tab, and that's going to tell me about what that's linked to, state discrimination, and the market punishes the discriminator. What's that? Come on, let's have a look. Okay, so I've no idea what this is, but I'm going to go find out now. So I've got this way of not just going to the core of the idea, but moving some steps away, and then with my class, coming back to that idea. And saying, okay, so, so it depends how old the students are, what their thinking has been, and so on. But we might do, this idea of markets punishing the discriminator. I am going to go home and find out what that is now. So, because I want to know. I thought I knew about discrimination, but I have no idea what that means. So now I want to go and find out about it. And of course, I can do things like the ones with in this tool, the ones with the green marker. So if I was to pick something like, institution, whatever. I can click on that, and what it will do is, it's going to open me another tab, and it's going to set me off in another direction. Oh, it's going to send me to so I've clicked on the wrong thing. It sent me to the page so I can find out a bit about it. But if I go back to my mind map, if I click on the orange, if I click on the green icon there, what it'll do is, it'll change my mind map so the institution is in the middle. So it allows me to go to that thing and then look at all the links out. And it's dropped my internet connection. Excellent, always good to use technology in the middle of a presentation. So, is it going to do it? No. Oh, here we go. It's just a bit slow. Okay, so there's institution now. So I've got examples of institutions. And I've got all kinds of places where I can go to and then come back to. So we're starting about discrimination. And now I'm talking about mass media and business and corporations and capitalism and, you know, and I can do this again and again and again and take that core idea of discrimination and just take steps away from it and then come back to it. The problem solving, the reasoning, in history we've got ideas around cause and effect and significance. The ways in which we can now pick that out, rather than just working through the content, doing this and then this and then this. The content is still crucially important, really, really important. But when we look at the content through this idea of much more understanding, when we look at the content through the essence of the subject, it changes the way that we think about it completely. It allows us to be much more creative. It demands of us that we're more creative when we come at it from different points of view. And it also allows us, I think, people talk about personalised learning. And for me, there's a mistake made when people associate personalised learning with individualised learning or customised learning. I don't think that's what we really mean when we talk about personalised learning. When we talk about personalised learning, we're talking about the kids taking it personally. We're talking about that they're deriving some real meaning from it. And it's not about facile relevance, it's about real felt meaning for the kids. And that can come from all kinds of places. And we can explore what that might be, using Wiki Mind Map or using some of the other tools, or just being able to, just giving ourselves that opportunity to be a bit more creative. One of the things that other people have suggested is, I'll slow again, fantastic. One of the things that other people have suggested is things like, if we've got this mind map, even the mind map that's got the core idea and then the links to it, and then we unpick all of those links, so we've got this interconnected mind map. One of the things that we might do is, here we go. So one of the things that we might do is give the kids the mind map, but take the middle out of it. And go, what do you think? And why do you think it? What are the links? So we're driving that relational thinking. So what are the links back to that core idea? Why do you think it's that? Well, does that match with the link to this idea? And so we can challenge and we can do the reasoning in any subject in lots of sophisticated ways. So look, this is just something that I stumbled upon or went looking for when I was thinking about how do we really use the curriculum to honour things like, when Hattie talks about multiple representations, being able to come at things from a number of different directions. Sometimes we do that in really sophisticated ways, and sometimes we do that in really surface level ways. But now with the curriculum, we get this opportunity to do multiple representations, to come at an idea through multiple representations in lots of different ways. The Wiki Mind Map tool might support that, but the curriculum demands it through coming at it through the essence of the curriculum.